So the Chicago Bears have an underdog coming out of mandatory minicamp that just forced everybody to pay attention. And I just absolutely love when this happens, when a forgotten player on a roster just kind of comes back from the dead and becomes a big-time factor. Now, it's rare, but there's times in NFL history when a player that many thought was cooked absolutely ascends and becomes a huge success. And if you're Bears fans, you remember Marcus Robinson. Absolute nobody in 1998. Sports Mockery pointed this out. And a year later, Dick Jauron arrived, creative offensive coordinator in Gary Crowton, and he absolutely exploded for 1,400 yards. And this is possibly what's happening with Dominique Robinson. This is kind of a player that's been on the roster bubble really last year and the previous year, and he just absolutely balled out during mandatory minicamp and in OTAs, and our head coach, he really took notice as well. So we're looking at a player that arrived from Miami of Ohio. We drafted him in the 5th round, and really good raw talent. We thought that he would develop into a really good pass rusher. Things started out nice. His first game, he had 1.5 sacks, but then kind of nothing, absolutely disappeared. He's been kind of written off as really one of the draft failures of the Chicago Bears, but his performance in minicamp, that thought might be a little premature. And here's to hear directly from head coach Ben Johnson, and he talked about the main best guys, the guys that showed the most in minicamp, and Robinson was one of them. I'll just let you hear it directly from Ben Johnson. Even without the pads on, Dominique's done a great job of constantly speed rushing up the field or countering back to the inside. He's just done a really nice job there. And of course, he's got some special teams value that he takes a ton of pride in as well. And if you're the Chicago Bears, we still need answers at the edge position. Right now, really only 2 proven options, right? You've got Montez Sweat and you've got Dayo Odunze. He didn't really show out very well in minicamp. But if you're talking about the NFL, anyone with knowledge, to be a good defense, you need at least 3 solid edge rushers. I would say that you need 4. Look at what the Philadelphia Eagles just did in their Super Bowl win. But finding that third one, it's often not a guy in a huge salary. It's not often a guy that you bring in from free agency. It's typically a guy that you develop from within. Now, granted, we've got a couple other candidates like maybe Austin Booker. Maybe he takes a step forward. He started to look really promising last year in his rookie year, but it's a complete unknown how he's going to develop. Why not Dominique Robinson with proper coaching? And if this guy was to somehow just come out of nowhere and give any significant production as well, that's a huge win for the Chicago Bears. Last year, he played 36 snaps, only had 3 pressures, but Dennis Allen has been an absolute magician with defensive ends in the past, especially just knowing which buttons to push. And you might be looking at a guy who's 26 years old. If he gets coached up, some of that raw talent that the Bears saw when drafting him in the 5th round, it could really come to fruition, and that would be such a big blessing to this defense. So let's kind of look at this a little closer. The guy was drafted in 2022 in the 5th round, and he only played 6 games. That's a career low. Only 1 start in 2024. Spent multiple weeks as an inactive scratch, and I don't think it's due to injuries. But here's the thing. Johnson is giving all these players an absolutely clean slate, and he doesn't care about what happened last year. And as a defensive lineman, he's not really going to know for sure how the coaches feel about him. I'm talking about Dominique until the pads come on, until he actually is getting some action against real offensive linemen, right? Real blocks, real chips. I'm just really looking forward to camp. This is going to be one of the big stories to watch. Johnson had a little more to say about him. He has popped out. He looks the part for sure. He does have a quick first step off the ball, and he lined up on our left tackles quite a bit here over the last few weeks. You can tell he got the edge on them and that it was happening consistently. And it's just really good. We've got a really critical head coach in Ben Johnson. He doesn't like to dole out praise unless it's earned. He's said as much. And for him to already be saying that about Dominique Robinson, it really gives you just a lot of optimism for this defensive line. If you can have a guy who is left for dead come up and give any type of production. What if he can come up on the line and get maybe 2 or 3 sacks? That is huge from a guy who was previously on the roster bubble. And he still does have that raw talent. He's already a really good core special teamer on this team, if you listen to our head coach. And I think he's got a chance to get back into the coach's good graces, a chance to make an impact on this defense and to actually make the 53. And kind of going to something that was said by Adam Hoge. Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, he gave Dominique Robinson the bulk of the reps at defensive end with the first team on these last practices. And head coach Ben Johnson, as I covered, he said that Robinson was a surprise standout in minicamp. That's really good news, right? 4th-year defensive end, thought to be on the 53-man bubble before training camp last year, and probably this year as well. That's just a really good sign, but it's also might be a bad sign. And I like to say positive. I don't usually like to give negative stories legs, but newcomer Dayo Odunze, he didn't have a very good showing this spring, and he actually sat out practice on Thursday. And this is what Hoge had to say about this. This is why you go through the offseason program and you go through OTAs, and you have this. It's always competition because the reality is the last 2 days, we've seen Dominique Robinson running with the ones, and I don't know what's going on with Dayo Odunze, but it's been Dom Rob. Is that a good nickname? I don't know if that's going to be an effective nickname. I don't want to say Dom Rob all the time. Sorry, Adam. But and it's just very surprising to me. A little more from Adam. But when you look at his size and his length and kind of his traits, they do perfectly fit Dennis Allen's prototype for a defensive end. Now, here's the big question. It's been great. So if you look at Odunze, the Bears signed Odunze to a 3-year deal. It was worth $48 million in the offseason. Pretty big chunk of change, right? Might have been a questionable signing to a lot of people. And he's also defensive end coming off a 3-sack season. He's had 16 and a half sacks in his 4-year career. Now, I've talked about before about Odunze. I'm not trashing him. I think he was a really good signing because the value of a player, I like to look more at pressures and pass rush win rates as opposed to specifically sack numbers, which he actually absolutely measures up in spades when using those analytics. So let's not just look at how many sacks he had last year. And Odunze as well, he believes there's more to his game than sack numbers in the stat sheet as well. Sack numbers on the stat sheet. This is going to be a tongue twister episode, you guys. But I think he has way more to show in training camp. I think Robinson was able to beat Darnell Wright and Karan Amagaje multiple times in the spring without the pads. But let's see what happens when we're in actual camp. And if you're the Bears, this has got to give them a little bit of pause because the Bears were counting on Odunze to become enough of a threat to make Montez Sweat's life easier, to make it so teams don't have to just double him. And also with these additions on the defensive line with Grady Jarrett, and we've also got Jervon coming into his own. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Billings is healthy, which is crazy. I think this defensive line is going to be just fine, but it would be so good to have Odunze come onto the scene and be more of a rotational player at times. If you have players like Dominique Robinson coming into their own, if we have our rookie out of Kansas coming into his own in Booker next year. But if you look at Odunze, he was practicing. It's early. I'm not saying this is turning into a Nate Davis kind of thing. Like, I feel bad even saying the name Nate Davis. So it's just flat out Robinson has had a strong showing in the spring before. And the true test of it is in camp. And the true test for Odunze and Robinson is going to come when the pads come on in training camp. And I'm not saying for a second Dominique Robinson is going to beat out Dayo for a starting job. I just think he's starting to assert himself and possibly become a part of this rotation at defensive end, and that would be such a huge blessing for the Chicago Bears. He's showed out in minicamp before. Let's see if it continues, and it's just giving us a player to watch, a player to see how he progresses in training camp, and for one, I can't wait. You guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about Dominique Robinson? And if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It is such a blessing as we push towards 10,000 subscribers as a channel. So you guys have been great. Bear down, and I will continue to be here with daily Chicago Bears news. See ya.